My name is Evelyn Solomonov. I live in Kfar Saba. I'm a member of the Organization for Bereaved Parents here, as well as, of course, a bereaved mother myself. I moved from Pittsburgh to Kfar Saba in 1994 with my two children, Michael and David. Michael lives in Philadelphia, and David is buried here in Kfar Saba. David was a Golani soldier. He was a sniper. On October 14th, on October 6th, 2003, the evening Neila, Yom Kippur, there was a knock on the door. 4 soldiers stood there and told me that David had been killed by snipers, by Hezbollah snipers. It was 3 days before he was supposed to be released from the army, his army service, and I can tell you that my life changed. It sounds trite, but that's exactly what happened. David was a sniper. He'd gone back to the army near Metula for the weekend, even though he didn't have to actually be there because he was a senior soldier and was getting out. One of his friends had been fasting for Yom Kippur and David volunteered to go and do his job that day, his surveillance of the border that day, since he had been fasting and wanted to go to Neila. The irony, of course, is that even though David was a sniper himself, he was killed by Hezbollah snipers. I didn't know much about David except for what I saw at home. You know, David was a 21-year-old kid who, for most of his life, was not a soldier. He raised as a soldier. He liked animals. We had 2 cats and a dog. He had worked at a vet. He loved capoeira. He was an instructor of capoeira. He majored in tikshoret in high school, even though he hated high school, but he liked his friends. And he had planned after the army to go on a trip around the United States with one of his friends, and then probably to study in the States, and then come back and he wanted to go into police work. I guess he liked protecting people. I learned much about him afterwards at the Shiva because his friends from the army told me he was funny. He liked doing weird things with the group, making them laugh. He used to help the young soldiers do guard duty so they would stay awake. So I learned about him all the time. He wasn't just the child I saw at home. The most important thing for me, of course, as a teacher, and that's what I am in Kfar Saba, and I work with young people all the time, is to realize that I need David's life to continue. And one of the ways for David to stay alive is through the project, thank God, that you do in Columbus. Last year, David Folster and Avi Kahan wrote about David, and they learned about his life, and then they wrote me, and their letters to me made a huge difference in the way I feel about things. I sent them back a letter, and I sent them a keychain, a Golani keychain, and then I heard afterwards that I think David had just passed his driving test, and so he was carrying the keychain around all the time, and I loved it because it made me realize that my David would stay alive and that somebody else knew about him. The important thing about the project, I think, and I tell my students all the time, it's really easy for us as teachers and for you as students at day school to understand the concept of Yom HaZikaron, to have a ceremony, and to always think about the soldiers and feel something for those soldiers who gave their lives for the state of Israel. But it's completely different when you see a picture, like the picture of Dave, and you learn about his life, to understand that it was a human being who had parents, who had brothers and sisters, who had people who joked around with him, they went dancing with him, and that he would be missed. And for me, it's been 10 years, and as a parent, I worry all the time that people will forget about him. But because of your project, I know that David will live on, and that there will be people who know him. And I think that, in fact, when you do this project with the parents, for the families of fallen soldiers in Kfar Saba, not only does it help you grow and help you have a connection to Israel, but it gives us a connection with people in the United States. And it makes us realize that there are other people whose lives our children have touched. And I just can't thank you enough for doing it. It means a lot to all of us. Meir Shalev wrote a poem in his book Esav, and I translated it for David's first Askara, which is true 10 years later, by the way. I'm going to read it to you because I think it sums up how we parents feel about the loss of our children. Do you know how many Memorial Days there are for a family each year? The National Day of Remembrance, the Memorial Day of the Unit, and of the Army Command, and of the school, and of the town. And what about my Memorial Day? The day he was born, the day he fell, and the day that I saw him the last time. And what about the moments of memory, when passing by the tree where he fell when he was sick, and the moment of silence upon meeting in the street one of his classmates, and the blink of an eye when seeing someone who looks like him, and the places? They seem so trivial and yet so awful. It isn't just the grave, the army monument, and the memorial corner at school. Apart from them, there is the spot where he died, which in Israel is never too far from home, and his place at the table. And when there are guests at the table, you always ask yourself whether or not to set a place for him. And when asked at any government office, or just in general, how many children you have, what answer do you give? 2, 1. What you do in Columbus is so important for us. I can't even begin to tell you how much peace of mind you give us, knowing that our children will continue with you. I'm forever grateful. And you should know also that for you who do the project, you are always, always welcome in our homes and at our tables. Thanks.